Hi, everyone. Hi. I'll wait a few minutes for everyone to join and maybe start at a couple of minutes past the hour. People joining now. Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you all for joining. Oh, this is great. I'll wait until about 1 minute past and then I'll begin because we've got quite a lot to get through, but there's a little bit of introduction at the beginning. So if anyone can join later, we'll still know what's going on. Okay, slides. Okay. All right. Let's kick off. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Roisin Noonan. I'm the CCO here at TLB and the co-founder at oneNDA. And welcome to today's Enterprise Contract Management Masterclass, where we're going to be covering how to expertly manage your contracts at enterprise scale. So just a bit of housekeeping before we kick off. I'm going to talk for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then I'm going to leave 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box throughout. And then I'm going to spend another 10 minutes after the Q&A session to talk a bit more about what we do here at TLB and what our partner organization, Simple Docs, also does. So if you're interested in hearing what we do here, please do stay on and we can answer some questions at the end there too. Okay, well, why are we all here? We're here because contracts are the lifeblood of any business. So not only do they keep your business going, but they also drive your business forward. And I think for most companies, if not all companies, the vast majority of your company value lies in your customer contracts. So they are absolutely integral to your company. And yet at the same time, despite them being so integral, actually managing those contracts and getting a handle on that, all of your contracts can be very challenging. So if you're a contracts manager, a procurement professional, a legal lead, or a legal ops professional, you will really appreciate how large and multifaceted this area can be and how difficult it can be to get your arms around it. And that's even more the case in an enterprise environment because you're dealing with really high contract volumes, unlike smaller organizations. You've got compliance obligations that you need to comply with, a lot of which is living in your contracts. And you have governance frameworks that you need to be thinking about and building into all of your contract processes. And as a consequence of that, because this is quite a difficult area, it's really large, there's lots of different areas to it that you need to be thinking about it. Most companies that we work with, or other companies more broadly, are hovering around the aware stage of the optimization scale. So this optimization scale is a contract management optimization scale. And we tend to use this to assess where organizations are at in terms of how efficient and how effective their contract management function is. So most companies are really thinking about these things and looking for ways to optimize, but you may not have actually taken the step to optimize the way in which you're managing your contracts. So you might have a very average speed to contract. You might not be particularly quick. You might not be particularly slow. So you're kind of hovering around the middle. You might be proactively looking to outsource non-core work, but you might not have actually taken that step yet. So all of your low level, high volume, but low risk work, you might be looking for partners for that, but not taking that step yet. You might be reviewing your templates for balance. You might have recognized that some of your templates are not quite as simple and easy to negotiate as you might like. You might be exploring implementing playbooks and taking a more standardized approach to risk. But again, you may or may not have implemented them yet. You might be looking at your contracting processes, so your contract creation process, your review and negotiation process, the way in which you store contracts, the way in which you manage obligations on an ongoing basis, and thinking about how to make those better. And you also might have implemented some technology, or you might be in the stage of researching technology to really speed up the way in which you manage your contracts. But where we want to be getting you to is an optimized state. So what does that look like? Well, you might have a market leading speed to contract. So your ability to contract faster than your competitors has become a competitive advantage for your organization. So you're adding real value to your business. All of your non-core work, so anything that isn't absolutely core to your business, has been outsourced to really high-performing partners. You have fully optimized and fully automated contract templates and playbooks in place. Your business is highly autonomous. This is really important. So your business is able to understand the contracting process. They have lots of resources that they can leverage for themselves to take on a lot of the contracting process themselves and push it forward without legal and procurement's help. You should have adopted standards, so standard form documents that you're not having to negotiate. And you will have centralized contract repository. Lots of organizations don't have this yet, but it's really essential to have all of your contracts in a centralized place to enable you to, well, not only manage your obligations on an ongoing basis, but report out of your database in terms of renewals, your risk profile across your contract landscape. And you also have a demonstrable ROI through valuable data and reporting. And that data may come from your repository, but comes from different parts of your contracting function to demonstrate that you're adding real value to your business and you're not just a cost center. So how do we get from being an aware contract management function to a highly optimized one, a highly efficient, highly effective contract management function? Well, there are 4 things that we need to do. So the first thing is setting a strategy. So I mentioned earlier, this is a really large, multifaceted area. It can be difficult to know where to start, and there's lots of noise out there as to how to do this. So establishing a clear objective of where you want to get to as a contract management function, and then a clear plan of action as to how you're going to get there. You then need to set yourself up to actually operationalize that strategy, and we're going to look at 6 key top tips in order to help you do that. You then need to document everything. This is really important, particularly in an enterprise environment. So once you have your strategy and these are all the processes you want people to follow, clearly documenting that and distributing it and making sure everyone is clear, because any lack of clarity in those processes can really generate inefficiency in an enterprise environment where there's lots of people. And then finally, data. Being able to gather data from your function, knowing what data you're collecting, where you're going to get it from, to really demonstrate that you are adding value to the business. And if you do all of that, you will become fully optimized. So first up is strategy. So you need to have a clear view of where you're going, and you need to have a plan of how you're going to get there. So start off by thinking about where you want to go. You can do that by looking at your business objectives at the outset. So if your overall business objective is to achieve a certain revenue target by 2025, for example, what contract management objectives flow from that? I've put a few here as an example. So it might be that you want to reduce your time to signature by 50%, because if you're able to do that, your business is able to close more contracts and hit their revenue target. Or you might want to reduce your legal and procurement costs by 20%. So you'll be able to reduce costs and you're increasing the number of contracts that your business is signing, so to achieve that revenue target. Okay, so once you've decided these are my objectives, how am I actually going to achieve them? You need to plan. Now, you can use this matrix to help you. This may look a little bit complicated, but I'll explain it and it's a little bit more simple. So what this matrix is designed to do is to help you disaggregate all of the different types of work that you do as a contract management function, and then determine whether or not you should continue to do that as a contract management function, or whether somebody else should be doing it. And then second from that, regardless of whether you do it internally or externally, what processes, what technology, what tools, and what artifacts do you need to implement to facilitate them being able to do it in the most efficient and cost-effective way? So I'm going to start with your low volume categories of work first. So low volume, high risk and complexity work. Example of this is like complex M&A, or if you have a really strategic contract that's a one-off, you need a very specific type of contract for a very strategic client. This is the type of work that should be sent to a law firm. That's because it doesn't make sense for you to have someone operating internally who's a very expensive resource, who is very specialized, but is only used on a very ad hoc basis. So it makes sense to use a law firm for this type of work. But you can do this in a very cost-effective way, or at least a much more cost-effective way, by implementing a panel of law firms, so you can generate cost efficiencies there and leverage their cost efficiencies they're giving you. Or you can implement a very quick and dirty tender process that you always follow, and you put out the work to various different law firms every single time to make sure you're getting the best possible cost and result for that work, bearing in mind our overall objective of reducing costs. Then if we also look at your low volume and low risk and complexity work, so examples of this might be contract queries, and these might be high volume depending on your organization. But it might be the business coming to legal and procurement and saying, hey, when is my contract up for renewal? Or, hi, can you tell me what my liability exposure is on all of these contracts? This is the type of stuff that does not need legal and procurement's input. And it can be easily insourced to the business as long as they have the right training and resources to help them answer these sorts of questions themselves. So a way that you might think about helping them answer these sorts of things themselves is by implementing a contract repository that they can go to and have a read-only view of their contracts. They can see where things are in the life cycle. They can do their own reporting so they can see when their renewals are coming up. And you can provide them with training, FAQs, etc. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail later. Then if we look at your high volume and high risk and complexity work, this is the type of work that should absolutely be dealt with within your legal team. So an example of that is strategic contracts. So the reason it makes sense for this to be dealt with by your legal team is that your legal team will have really deep product knowledge and potentially regulatory knowledge specific to what you're offering. And they also have like unparalleled access to other people in your team and stakeholders to actually make that strategic contract review and negotiation as efficient as possible, much more so than somebody doing it externally. But again, you need to think about the processes that are enabling them to do that, and are they as efficient and cost effective as possible? Some things that you could implement to help them do this quicker and better are providing them with better contract templates, providing them with playbooks so they're able to negotiate in a more standardized way as much as possible, and potentially even providing them with some sort of contract review tool to help them do that better. And then finally, we look at your high volume, low risk and complexity work. This type of work is ripe for outsourcing, and I'll come on to why in a minute. It doesn't necessarily make sense for your very expensive strategic resources to be doing this sort of work. So an example of that is your BAU contract review and negotiation, the sort of low-level work that often is overlooked as not being particularly important, but it's very important, as I said earlier, to keep your business moving. And it's extremely important to the stakeholders who need legal or procurement to review their contract. So in terms of processes you might want to be thinking about in order to facilitate them doing it in the most efficient way, if you do choose a partner or a shared services center, they will have their own processes to do this very efficiently. But you can also implement an intake form that the business can use to liaise directly with that partner, so they're not having any back and forth. And it means that legal and procurement are taken out of the equation completely, which is freeing them up for this more value-add strategic work. So just coming on to outsourcing in a bit more detail, the reason this makes sense to be outsourced either to a shared services center or a partner is that this is highly commoditized work. And as a consequence of that, these partners become absolute experts in their field of commercial contracting in a way that, for example, if you gave it to a more junior member of your legal team, a paralegal, for example, they're not going to have that real deep expertise. The second reason is that they work to very strict SLAs. Contracts are fundamentally time sensitive. And if you give your BAU commercial contracting to your legal team, often what happens is that it's deprioritized because they've got so much other things to be working on and strategic contracts to be working on too. So these sorts of partners will work to very strict SLAs and they are accountable to you for them. They're also usually tech enabled, making them very much more cost effective than potentially using your internal resources that are otherwise busy. And I've mentioned this a few times now, but it reserves those internal resources for that strategic work that is driving your business forward. But as I said, this type of work is very important for the BAU and keeping you moving. Okay, so that was a bit of a canter through strategy, but once you've got a clear view of what your objectives are, and then you put a plan in place for, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing. Here's what everyone's going to be doing. These are the new processes I want people to follow. And these are all the artifacts I need to create for them. You then need to set yourself up to actually operationalize that strategy. And that means providing people with those processes, providing them with the templates and et cetera they need to deliver on what you want. So here are our 6 top tips that we're going to go through in detail. for setting yourself up for success to deliver on your strategy. The first is to find the right partner. If you are thinking about outsourcing, you are going to need to find the right partner for that. The next are to optimize your templates, create playbooks, and adopt standards. Often, the importance of your actual contracts and the artifacts that you use to contract are overlooked in favor of technology. But I have to say, in our experience, it's absolutely fundamental to get these basics right, because they can massively speed up your speed to contract, even far more so than technology can do. And it's important to do that before you implement technology, because if you put not great templates and not amazing processes into technology, you'll get the same out. You also, of course, need to implement the right technology. And finally, you need to train the business if you are looking at insourcing work to them. Okay, finding the right partner. So just as in life, as in contract management, you need to find the right partner if you're looking to outsource. As an absolute bare minimum, that partner should be providing you with a very efficient and cost-effective service, because otherwise there's no point giving it to them and you might as well be dealing with it in-house. So as a bare minimum, that's what you need. Even better than that, you need a partner who understands all of the elements of an effective contract management function. So all of the things I've just talked about: templates, playbooks, standards, technology. Because what you really want in that partner is that they add more value to you and help you build a more robust contract management function that can add value over the longer term. You want them to be tech enabled and help to enable you to provide you with very valuable data about what's going on in your contracts, who's using them the most, does this person over here need some training? Oh, sorry. Don't know if you can hear me. I just got a strange thing about my microphone. Just check Q&A just to make sure. Can everyone hear me still? Yes, good. Okay, cool. I'll continue. Sorry. That's fair. It does that a lot. It kind of picks up my headphones. Okay. All right, I'll continue. Yes, you want them to provide you with valuable data, and you also need them to be culturally aligned with you. This is also often overlooked, but this partner is going to be completely embedded into your team. They're going to be an extension of your team. Your business is going to be interacting with them a lot. So you want to make sure that they are culturally aligned with you and that they do business in a way that you like and is aligned with how you guys do business. I also saw that someone mentioned what's an SLA and what does SLA stand for. Sorry, I should have explained that. SLA means your service level. So how quickly are they able to turn things around by comparison to your in-house legal or procurement team? Okay, optimizing your templates. This is absolutely essential to standardize, simplify, and streamline your templates. So in terms of what that looks like, here's an example of some work that we did with the UNHCR. So UNHCR had a partner agreement where they entered into an agreement with lots of different aid organizations on the ground. So they may be larger aid organizations, but they might be very small refugee-led aid organizations. And they were finding that their template was actually very difficult for them to negotiate, and it was taking a really long time. So what we did, we worked with them to, the right-hand side version is the result, to simplify the language, to streamline the template completely, to standardize the boilerplate across multiple different templates. We use visuals because, again, if English isn't someone's first language, helping them really understand what the contract is all about, structuring it away with nice infographics so that people are really able to follow it, writing it in plain English. So this is what you could do to your templates. But this isn't fundamentally about making things look nice. It's about removing friction in the contracting process. I think we probably all have reviewed contracts and negotiated contracts that are just so difficult to negotiate, are so long, overly so, have so much difficult language in them. And they're just, you as a human being just really don't want to engage with them. By creating something that people want to engage with, you will fundamentally be able to close that contract quicker. And whilst you're optimizing your templates, it really makes sense to also optimize your contracts for technology. So what do I mean by that? Here's an example of a services agreement that you might want to put into an automation tool. So if you were going to do that, there's lots of optionality in this contract, which is represented by the yellow bits all over it. If you automated this exact template and put it into an automation tool, you would have to ask the user a question for every single one of these yellow bits. Ultimately, that creates a really long Q&A form. And if you've ever gone through some sort of really long Q&A, it's really boring and you don't want to do it. And people, particularly business people, will just bypass that process and go back to you anyway. So if you really want to streamline your process, make sure your templates are fully streamlined, limit optionality so that when it's automated, it's super easy to complete for people. And ideally, you can move your variables in your contract to the top of the document. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But just so it's really simple and easy to complete, they only need to complete the top end of the document and then off they go. Okay. Right, so once you've got your nice new shiny templates that are super easy to negotiate, you can then create contract playbooks. For those of you who haven't come across a playbook before, so a playbook can take lots of various different forms, but it's fundamentally a tool to help you negotiate contracts. And it could be a document, it could be a dynamic playbook, which has got sort of if yes, then this, if no, then this, or it can be in the form of a spreadsheet. What it does is it sets out all of the key terms or all of the terms in your playbook, indicates whether or not that term is negotiable, then how far it's negotiable, and then sets out your fallback positions for each of those terms. And you pre-agree these terms internally, and that includes engaging with stakeholders to pre-agree their terms. So for example, finance might say our first position is that we only accept 30-day payment terms, but if certain criteria are met, we will agree to 45-day payment terms. If we don't agree to 45-day payment terms, then it needs to get escalated to finance, and we can make an exception again if certain criteria are met. So you pre-agree these things all up front. So it means that legal and procurement are not solely accountable for the contract negotiation. Everyone in the business is fundamentally accountable for what ends up in the contract. And why would you do this? Well, it materially increases your speed to contract because you're not constantly thinking about what is my position for this or asking other people in the business. It also enables you to really easily delegate this work either to other people in the so more junior members of your team or procurement team, or externally completely, so you can get it off your plate totally. And it also enables you to monitor how good your templates are and whether or not you need to tweak your positions as you move through. So you might find that you are consistently negotiating certain positions. You might want to make a log of this in your playbook and iterate on your template to make it better and just remove that friction altogether if it's something you don't really massively care about. Okay, now even better than having amazing templates and having playbooks that you negotiate in a consistent way are adopting standards. So standard form templates are agreements that you fundamentally don't negotiate at all because everyone has already pre-agreed on the terms. Examples of those are oneNDA and oneDPA. If you haven't come across them, oneNDA and oneDPA are initiatives that we spearheaded back in 2020 to create these crowdsourced, open source, completely free to use templates. And this is oneNDA on the right-hand side. And the way that this works is that you simply populate a few variables at the top of the document. So what is the purpose of your NDA? What's the duration, governing law, jurisdiction? And then the back end of the document is completely non-negotiable. So you're fundamentally just negotiating on these very few data points. And in terms of whether or not you should think about downloading and using oneNDA, you would be in safe hands because 24,000 people have already downloaded oneNDA. It's very broadly used. It's available in 54 countries and it's also available on over 20 tech platforms. So your tech platform might already have oneNDA programmed into it. And in terms of how standards help, this is just an example of how oneNDA has helped Diageo massively reduce the amount of time that they spend negotiating NDAs because they're using oneNDA, sorry. Now, even better than providing the business with a document that they can fill out, because we know that the business doesn't always necessarily want to be working in Word, you can completely automate the creation of oneNDA, and you can use your own automation tool to do that, or you can use AutoNDA, which is a completely free to use, purpose-built oneNDA automation tool within the Simple Docs environment. So this is, as I said, been purpose-built for oneNDA specifically. So all you would need to do as a legal and procurement team or a contract management team is come in here, configure what your variables are. So you could preset a purpose. This is our confidentiality period. This is our governing law and jurisdiction. And then connect it with your DocuSign, Adobe Sign, whatever it is. And then the business can just start automating NDAs immediately by putting in the email address of the counterparty. So if you haven't seen oneNDA before or AutoNDA, I urge you to check them out because it will make your life a lot easier. Okay, you also need to implement the right tech. So just going back to our objectives of reducing our time to contract, increasing our speed to contract, and massively reducing our costs. Obviously, technology takes a huge role as part of that. But choosing the right technology can be extremely overwhelming. We know this firsthand, having worked with many organizations to look at this. There are over 400 legal tech tools on the market. They all have slightly different, but also many of the same feature sets. So it can be very difficult and overwhelming to choose the right tool. But it's really important that you take a very methodical approach to choosing the right technology to help you optimize your contract management function. So the first thing you need to look at are, what problems are you trying to solve and what are your objectives? So we've got our objectives. What problems do we have that mean we aren't able currently to achieve our objectives? So for example, we want to increase our speed to contract. It might be that the business keeps coming to you to request that you create contracts for them, in which case you might be looking at contract automation tools. So identify your objectives and then really refine your problems. Speak to stakeholders about that problem and make sure you really, really understand it and understand their problems if they might have a different take on things to legal and procurement. You then need to gather your requirements that correspond with those problems. So as I mentioned, if your problem is legal is overwhelmed with requests or procurement is overwhelmed with requests to create contracts, a requirement might be, we need automation. You then prioritize those requirements. This is where you should be really brutal as to what is actually a must-have, what is a should-have, and what is a nice-to-have. The main problem we find with people going out to procure legal tech is that there are far too many must-haves, and ultimately that leads to you procuring a tool that is not necessarily best suited for your organization, and because you're trying to make it do too much. Then you can go into RFP stage, or you can just demo a few tools that you think are best suited for your organization. And you should really consider point solutions as part of this, because implementing a huge CLM is a massive undertaking. And it might be that you just need a few point solutions to do quite specific things in your function. And then finally, you can move to the award phase. So choosing your vendor and moving forward with them. This is a whole huge area of choosing tech, implementing it correctly, change management. So there are webinars on our website which you can check out to look at this specifically. But just to say, to build a highly efficient and effective contract management function, you do need to look at technology. And you can also check out our legal tech directory on the TLB website in the resources section. If you are thinking about legal tech and you want to filter on some requirements about, repository and reporting, etc., there has lots of tools in there that you can have a look at. Okay, now, if you had decided as well that you want to insource things to the business, so answering questions, contract queries, you need to think about how you're going to do that. So running training sessions, but that can be very effective, but often people forget things or you get new joiners. And so those training sessions are sort of, unless they're recorded and can be redistributed, they can sometimes be a bit less powerful than playbooks and cheat sheets, for example, setting up a really clear resources hub so that the business can access and use. And then turning off alternative routes. So this is a bit of a nuclear option. But if, for example, you have to date always received work into your contract management function via email, a centralized inbox, you might want to turn that route off completely and send an auto reply to your business that says, thank you for your email, but you now need to send work over here. So that's something to consider when training the business. Okay, so once you've got your clear objectives of where you're going, you've set out your plan, these are all things I want to do, and then you've set yourself up to actually deliver on that strategy, you need to document all of this. So you need to formalize your processes. If you've decided this is how we're going to now create contracts, this is how we're going to review and negotiate them, this is our approvals workflow, this is how we're going to sign them, this is how we're going to store them, this is how we're going to manage them on an ongoing basis, you need to really formalize all of that and document it very clearly, because as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, if there's any lack of clarity as to who is both accountable and responsible for each of these elements of your processes, then you're going to have an issue. And particularly in an enterprise environment, when there are so many teams, so many people, you need absolute clarity to create that efficiency. And then you also want to distribute these processes. So you don't necessarily want them to just live within legal and procurement. You want to make sure that everyone is very clear on what these processes are. Finally, data. So you need to do two things with data. One is to demonstrate that your strategy is actually working. You want to use it for yourself to check, are we achieving what we wanted to achieve? Are we moving in the right direction towards our objectives of reducing time to contract and reducing time to contract and reducing your costs or not? But you also want to use it to demonstrate externally that you are adding value to the business. So review your objectives in the first instance, because there's a lot of data that you can be measuring, but you need to think about what you should be measuring in order to demonstrate that you're achieving your objectives. So looking at data, it can be also a bit overwhelming because there's lots of different data points that you can measure, but just think clearly about your objectives and what do I need to demonstrate this? And there are sort of 3 different camps of data that you could look at for your objectives, whatever they are. So you might be looking at metrics that demonstrate risk reduction. You might be looking at metrics that demonstrate cost savings. You might be looking at metrics that demonstrate that there's a reduction in time to do a certain thing. So as an example, if we want to reduce our time to contract by 50%, the data that we might be looking for are our speed to contract, how quickly are we actually contracting. We might also be interested in the number of contracts that are being created. If, for example, we have introduced a new automation tool, how many contracts are actually being created through that tool versus how many we used to create via legal and procurement. And you also might be interested in looking at how many queries are we receiving, because in order to reduce your time spent to contract, you need to spend less time in legal and procurement answering very BAU basic queries. And so you might be looking out for data that demonstrates that that number has gone down. And where do you get it from? So you might be getting this information from your legal front door. That's sort of where you gather generally sort of who's engaging with legal the most, how much are they engaging with legal, and it can also provide you in the back end tracking on how much work the legal team has. So you might be looking at that. Again, you might be looking at your contract automation tool, and you also might be looking at your smart repository. This is absolutely integral to have your contracts centralized in one place where you can track not only just renewals, but what is your contract landscape looking like? What is your liability exposure more broadly? Who are you contracting with? So you might be pulling your data from there too. So just think about what data you need, what technology you have, and how you'll get it out of there. And if you get all of this right, you will be fully optimized. So just a recap of what that looks like. As a contract management function, you will have a market-leading speed to contract because you have absolutely amazing templates, technology, and it's all working very clearly. Everyone knows what they're doing. All of your non-core work is outsourced to very high-functioning partners, and your very expensive legal resources are only being used for the strategic work that's driving the business forward. You have fully optimized and automated templates and playbooks. You have a highly autonomous business that is very self-sufficient and self-serving. You have adopted standards. You have that centralized contract storage and reporting. And you have a very clear, demonstrable ROI through data and reporting. And you're demonstrating we have massively reduced our speed to contract and we have massively reduced our costs. And that's why we're contributing to this overall objective of our hitting a certain revenue target. So that was a lot of me talking. So I'm going to pause there for Q&A. Just bring up the Q&A now. That was actually 30 minutes on the dot. So I don't know if actually some people have asked them in the chat as well, but please feel free to drop in any questions to Q&A. So I've already answered the one about SLA. What types of metrics measure risk reduction and how can you best track it? This is a really good question. It's generally, it's something that you can start tracking in your playbook fundamentally. So it may or may not be out of technology, but looking at how is your playbook performing? How frequently are you agreeing to things outside of your standard positions? Maintaining that exceptions log very aggressively to make sure that you're consistently updating your playbook to make sure you're not taking positions that are outside of pre-approved positions. Any sample playbook? Yes, we have a sample playbook on our website. So you can go and have a look at that. It's in our resources hub. You can go and download it. It's a template and you can start to work off that immediately. If you have to draft an FIDIC contract, what would the playbook be for me? I actually don't know what that is, but would it be the FIDIC guidelines? I think the answer to that is possibly, because when you're negotiating data processing agreements using Article 28 of the GDPR, Article 28 is a great starting point as a playbook, effectively, to make sure that you've got all those things in a DPA. So I would say yes, but I'm sorry, I don't totally know what they are. SLA, I think I mentioned that earlier, but I can provide a bit more detail on that. And SLA is a service level agreement. So when you have an outsourcing partner or any sort of partner in any service industry, they have certain obligations that they have to hit. And an SLA, in this case, I'm talking about how quickly is your outsourcing partner turning your contracts around. Any other questions? Oh, and someone's just dropped the playbook template in the chat. So you can just go to the link just right there. Any other questions? One more. Okay. Which KPIs or metrics could be monitored to demonstrate ROI and cost reduction? I think that really depends on how you're set up, but and to demonstrate ROI ultimately depends on what you're trying to demonstrate. So I think the starting point is establishing what your objectives are, and then just thinking very plainly. Forget everything else. Forget that you're a contract management function. Just think plainly, how do I actually demonstrate this? And then work out whether or not you can gather that data from your function to be able to demonstrate that. But some of the things that I just mentioned should hopefully demonstrate cost reduction. Cost reduction is a big one. You might be thinking about headcount. You might also be thinking about external counsel spend. So those are two areas that you could look at. Are templates revisable? For example, we have a particular preferred provision for our NDAs. No, oneNDA is not amendable. If you do change the content of oneNDA, then you can't call it oneNDA anymore. I mean, you can do that, but you have to remove all the brand assets and you can't call it oneNDA anymore. But it's been adopted by hundreds and hundreds of organizations. So hopefully in the most cases that will work for your organization too. There may be edge cases where you need this particular NDA. Okay, another question. Is there a specific AI tool which can be used to identify certain metrics in the centralized contract repository and present the data in a nice way? For example, for identifying the contracting party? Yes, and I am actually going to talk a little bit more about AI now if you're interested in staying on, so let me know if so. Okay, if there are no more questions for the minute, oh no, there's one more. How can we implement this idea in a company with a high demanding project? How do we prioritize the tasks? So I think your question is getting at project management fundamentally. I would implement some sort of project management tool, maybe, well, you might have tools internally, but you can use sort of Kanban board tools and put all your tickets in there and prioritize that accordingly, potentially working in an agile way, working on a 2-week sprint basis to deliver that project and demonstrate every 2 weeks that you're demonstrating value to the business. So I hope that kind of gives some answer for that. Any quick wins to help the business with business buy-in? Yes, implementing oneNDA. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but it's so easy to implement. It's so simple. The business love it because all they have to do is literally send it out and it gets accepted like 99% of the times. So I would highly recommend looking at that. Any other questions? Okay, I'll just spend the last 10 minutes then explaining a bit more about what we do here at TLB. So let me close the Q&A for now. Okay, so having worked with hundreds of organizations over many years and having delivered oneNDA, we really do know what good looks like when it comes to contracting. Obviously, I've just been talking about that quite a lot. And that's why we've, over the years, developed our contracts as a service solution, which is designed to help specifically legal and procurement teams contract more efficiently, more predictably, and more cost effectively than ever before. And in terms of what that looks like, we not only take on your end-to-end contract review, negotiation, and management on an ongoing basis, but our solution also encompasses all of the things I've just been talking about. So template design, playbook creation and optimization, helping you implement the right technology, helping you have the right tech stack for your function in terms of automation and storage, in order to fundamentally help you build a better contract management function that adds value to your business over the longer term. So just in terms of the specifics, we have an expert team here in the UK powered by AI. So we use an AI tool to help review contracts, which means that not only are your contract reviews extremely meticulous, but they're highly, highly efficient. We set you up with playbooks from the get-go. So you have our own TLB market standard playbook, but we'll also develop bespoke playbooks for your own customer paper. And we continuously enrich those playbooks over time using data that we're gathering from your reviews to improve those contracts over time and make them much more better, much more efficient. We offer transparent fixed fees, which is extremely rare in this market. So for every contract that you submit to us, we will provide you with a fixed fee upfront that covers the full end-to-end review and negotiation. So you are always incredibly clear on what you're going to get charged, and there are no surprises. It enables you to budget plan fundamentally. And we are highly efficient, pragmatic, and commercial. We work to a 1 to 2 day SLA, and we work on a 1 day SLA for NDAs. And we really pride ourselves on a pragmatic commercial approach. We have been contracting for years. We really know what good looks like. And we know that we know how to contract in the most pragmatic way. That means that we get the deal done in a very, we don't over lawyer essentially. So in terms of our packages, we have 3 different packages, and you can choose from the 3 depending on your volumes, essentially. So there's a monthly minimum for each of the package. As I say, every single contract review is fixed price, and you can choose depending on your volumes, and then the unit price per contract review decreases as you increase in your minimum monthly commitment. And you can just actually see here as well, different examples of contracts and how much they would cost under each of those packages. But fundamentally, all of our packages include everything on the left, because it's really important to us that we're not just taking on your contract review negotiation and taking stuff off your plate, which of course we are, but also that we are adding value to your business longer term and helping you build a much better contract management function long term. So AI-assisted review is included as standard. Bespoke playbooks are included as standard, as is template redesign. So as we're working with you, we'll look at your templates and determine, could these be better? Could they be more frictionless? We'll integrate with your systems if you want us to. We don't necessarily have to do that, but we can integrate with your systems. We provide white glove account management for all of our different packages, because it's really important to us that our customer satisfaction is our highest priority. So you'll have a dedicated account manager, you have a dedicated team who you know, and we always want to keep our customers happy. So that applies across the board. We provide you with monthly reporting and data insights as to what is going on in your contracting function that you can then use potentially to report upwards. And as an optional extra, subject to an additional fee, we can also provide you with a contract repository. And that repository is here. It's powered by Simple Docs. So you can have all of your contracts stored centrally, which, as I mentioned for all the reasons earlier, is absolutely essential. It enables your business to come in here and see where all of your contracts are. And this is connected to your signature tools. So everything ends up in here automatically. And we can provide a managed service on top of this. So we can keep on top of your contract database for you, so you don't have to. I mentioned earlier, our client happiness is our #1 priority, and this is just something that one of our clients said about us and working with us. And it's fundamental that we always gather feedback from our clients and make sure that you're having the best experience that you possibly can. And we are adding that value over the long term. And again, just some of the organizations that we've worked with. Okay. Yes, so I was thinking there was another slide there, but if you are interested in hearing more about this, I would love to chat. My email is here. My name's Roisin at tlb.law. So please just drop me an email and we can have a conversation. And if you have any questions about this presentation or anything at all, please just drop me a line. And thank you very much. And I hope you join the next one, which will be in the new year. Thank you very much. And I think we'll leave it there. Stop sharing.